house needs painting, the grass needs mowing. Where's he at?
Hi, this is Hank. Sorry I missed your call. Leave me your name and your number and I'll get back to you.
He's gone fishing.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Mossy Oak and Liqua Molly.
Welcome to Off the Water with Hank Parker. I'm your co-host, Sarah Beth, and you are...
I'm silencing my phone because I'm Hank Parker and my phone rings a lot. So I've now silenced my phone and ready to do the podcast Off the Water.
Off the Water, Mr.
Hello,
Popular.
Sarah Beth.
Hello, Hank.
Well, we're having a good day this day. It's a beautiful, beautiful day.
Warm day.
Water temperature is on the rise. Fish are biting. So let's just talk for a few minutes about springtime bass fishing. And that is just the ultimate in this whole world. People look forward to this all year long, and we've endured the cold winter months. I think global warming is out the window. Man, what a cold January, February we've had in the Carolinas. So our water temperature has been down. But, you know, it's amazing to me how many people caught fish. I look at the scoreboards. You know, I live close to Lake Murray, which is a premier lake, gets a lot of attention in South Carolina, and it's a fantastic lake. And I look at what's being caught, and I'm thinking about, with all this adverse weather, I mean, they're out there fishing in rough wind, water's rough, water temperature's cold, air temperature's cold, you got to bundle up, but yet they're bringing big strings of bass to the scales, and I marvel at that somewhat. And then Little Lake Monticello that I fish a lot, it's produced a lot of great strings right here in all this adverse cold weather. So it's amazing all the fish that are being caught today versus when I was younger. Man, when the water temperature was under 50 in the Carolinas, it was pretty much zilch.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't catch much of nothing. I can remember growing up and fishing Lake Wiley once when we had the water temperature down around 41 or 42, which is ridiculously cold. But I fished for 3 days and didn't get a bite.
Wow.
And so now I'm looking at these guys that are going out there with that water temperature down in the low 40s as it was when I fished on Wiley and didn't get a bite, and they're catching big strings of fish. So a lot being learned, a lot of technology, a lot of information, a lot of new methods, a lot of new techniques that are catching fish. And so we need to talk about that. As controversial as some of it is, we need to talk about it. And what's taking place now? I mean, now everybody's catching fish. You can catch them any way you want to catch them almost. Mm-hmm. Fish are really on fire. And that is why springtime fishing is so popular, and it's what makes it so much fun. And you catch big ones and you catch numbers. I mean, it's all good. So let's start out. First of all, my grandson Boone, he called me a week or two ago, and he said, "Papa, I want to go fishing." I said, "Boone, the only day I have next week to fish will be Tuesday, and I see the water temperature is going to be about 50 degrees, but the air temperature, which is what I'm mostly concerned about, is going to be about 27, and that's where we're going to start out." Turned out it worked out fine. It was a great day. It warmed up quickly. But Boone said, "Papa, toughen up, buddy. we need to go fishing." I said, "Come on, Boone, come on." So he worked all day on Monday until 6 o'clock and drove 3.5 hours, almost 4 hours, to my house. Got here about 10 o'clock at night, 10:30. Got up the next morning at 5, and we went fishing. And I'm going to tell you, we scoped. I wanted to show him the new Mega Live 2, so we scoped till noon. And we started at daylight. We scoped till noon. Boone caught 1 catfish and 1 crappie, and I caught 0. And at about 12:30, we started fishing. I started throwing a bladed jig. Caught one right off the bat. Threw a arc jerkbait. Caught one right off the bat. Threw a couple of shaky head worms and started catching them. Make a long story short, I threw a spinnerbait and caught a couple. Threw a arc crankbait and caught a couple. And, man, we caught them. And we caught them, and you say, well, why'd you throw all those different baits? Well, I was reading the water. You know, you use a fishing lure like a tool. You've heard me say that 100 times. So when I came to a stumpy point, I wanted to use a square bill that I could run through the stumps and not hang up. Arc makes an incredible square bill, probably the best square bill in the world. And I ran it through those stumps and boom, caught fish. And then when we got another little place where I knew there was a brush pile, I wanted to fish it slow with a worm, and I started fishing a worm, and I thought, you know, there might be some bigger fish in here, so I picked up a Randall Tharp jig, and I threw the jig in there. The worm and the jig will fish pretty similar to one another. You just catch bigger fish sometimes on a jig, so I did. I caught about a 4.5-pound smallmouth. That rascal was long and lean. It could have weighed 6 or 7 easy. It's about 26.5 inches long, but only weighed about 4 pounds. But nevertheless, caught it on a jig. But from noon until 4 o'clock, say from 12:30. From 12:30 in 3.5 hours, we caught about 22. And Boone had a largemouth about 5. I had a smallmouth about 4.5. And then we had several more 4-pounders. Boone lost a toad on a bladed jig. I mean a toad. And then I lost a big one on a jig, on a Randall Tharp jig. So it was good, but we caught 0 on forward-facing sonar in 5 hours, and then we caught 22 just beating the bank with traditional fishing. So your expectations sometime, and this is my whole point that I'm trying to make, springtime. Don't have your sights set on one method, one technique, one area of the lake, 1 or 2 different lures. Be wide open, because I'm telling you, it's no limits to what you can do and what may be happening in the spring. But if you go with your mind fixed on one method or one technique, you may not catch them. So nope. I really wanted to catch them and show Boone, because he's young and smart, and I'm old and dumb, and I want him to learn forward-facing sonar to teach me. You know, these kids have taught me way more than I've ever learned on my own, and so I want to get Boone on it, you know, and he'll catch them. He'll figure it out. He's smart.
Hey, that goes both ways, though. Younger people know the technology, and y'all know the older way, like the classic way of fishing. And like we said before, you have to be well-versed in everything before you go adding in any sort of technology. I think that's pretty cool.
When you fish with guys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, children, and I love these high school guys, and I talk about this a lot. They're full of enthusiasm, full of excitement, and Ben's in that Boone. I call him Ben all the time. I have a son, Ben, and Boone. But Boone is in that category. Boone he's excitable. He's enthusiastic, and he's appreciative of the creation and the opportunity to be on the water. So there's a lot of energy going there. And I've always been like that. You know, I've never grown up. I've grown old, but I've never grown up. So I've got all this energy. So we got a lot of synergy going. And in the heat of the battle, many times, that's when the real questions come out that are so important. And you may think you get what's being said at the seminar, or you may think you got it completely when you read it on a social post. Yeah. But when you're in the heat of the battle, you realize you don't completely understand exactly what you thought you might have understood when you read the post.
Exactly.
So I'm out there fishing with Boone, and I always talk about water column, fishing the water column, fishing the water column, fishing the water column. Well, I'm changing baits like crazy. Yeah. Well, Boone wants to fish with what I'm fishing with if I catch a fish. Yeah. So I'm going on, and I'm changing baits, and I'm doing it. And he's wigged out back there because beside me, he didn't fish out of the back. He fished right beside me, but he's still fishing behind me because I got my foot on the troll motor, and I'm wide, and I block the road where I can see my hummingbirds better than he can. You know, I take every advantage because he'll wear me out if I let him get a little head start. Yeah. So I keep him on defense. But he's wigged out, with me changing all these different baits.
I'd be wigged
Papa,
out too.
Yeah, you just caught a fish on that jerk bait. Why are you putting that down and picking up a worm? Papa, you just caught a fish on that shaky head. What are you doing putting that jig on? Papa, you just caught a fish on that so-and-so. Why are you changing to this? And I talked about the water column. Well, you take for granted when you talk about the water column, people understand what you're talking about. Even though you may explain it, I realized Boone did not follow as closely as what I perceive someone to follow when you talk about the water column. When the water is 10 feet deep, you have 0 on the surface, and you go down an inch, 2 inches, a foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, you go to 10 foot. Those fish can be on the bottom. Bass like to feed on the bottom. So it's pretty common to catch fish on the bottom. But very often, and I used to say in the spring and the fall of the year, now I'm learning because of what you can see on the screen of forward-facing sonar, I'm learning fish suspend a lot more than I ever thought they did, and for reasons that I still right this second don't understand. I completely understand why in the spring of the year, when you start out in the morning and the water temperature on the surface is 56 degrees and the water underneath is 55, 56, I totally understand why those fish are on the bottom.
Yeah.
And especially when you start out in the morning and the water temperature is 52 and the water on the bottom is 56.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the day, with that bright sun shining, the water temperature on the surface is 68. I can see why those fish would lift up off the bottom and come up to that warmer water.
Because I would too.
And so that makes sense to me.
Yeah, it does.
And I've always taught that. And I've always thought that that was absolutely the reason fish suspend, the reason the water column warms up. And I say water column. What I'm talking about is the water from 0 to 10 feet. That's a column of water. And every foot interval, those fish find a comfort zone. And there are 2 types of plankton in the lake. There's an aquatic plankton and there's a vegetation plankton. Or a vegetation aquatic's the same thing. And there's a marine plankton. Let me get it straight, I'm old. There's a marine plankton and an aquatic plankton. And sometimes that plankton suspends, and when that happens, the bait suspends. When the bait suspends, the bass follow. So it's a chain, and you can see it happening.
Yeah.
You can see it a lot of times on electronics. You can see thermocline. And so you see and you read the water and you have an explanation why fish suspend. Now, all of a sudden, here comes forward-facing sonar. Whether you like it or whether you don't like it, I'm just talking about the benefit of seeing things live.
Yeah.
I mean, you're
Watching
looking
them.
at live sonar. Why are these fish suspended? I don't get it. When they caught all those fish back in those cold winter months, everybody that I talked to, I fished with Brett Myers Jr. And I know Brett Myers, his dad, but Brett Myers Jr. is a stick boy. That kid is a fisherman now. I'm impressed with him. But we're catching fish suspended in ice cold water on an ice cold day early in the morning. And they're suspended up there over 70 or 80 feet of water, 50 feet of water, 60 feet of water. They're suspended 10, 12 foot deep.
Wow.
And he said, Hank, these fish that you see out here by themselves, suspended in 10 foot of water, 10 feet deep and 60 feet of water, they'll bite. Those fish down there 50 or 60 feet deep, they don't bite. They're harder to get to bite. They will bite, but they're really hard. These up here are
Easier.
low-hanging fruit, man. They're easy to catch.
Okay.
Why is that? Why are they there? Why are they there early in the morning when the water temperature is colder up there than it is down below? What are they doing? I don't know.
Guess you gotta just know the nature of the fish. What are their feeding patterns like? You know, why would they be at the surface during that time? Maybe it has something to do with bait. Maybe they've learned something on that water that something drops down, or they're looking for bugs, food, whatever they can get.
That is a logical explanation, and that would obviously be anybody that fishes regularly would say, well, it's because of bait. You know, they're there because. But these fish are up here 10 feet deep, and the bait pods are down there 12 to 25 feet.
So
they're just up there cruising. Now, I don't get it. So a lot of information that we're getting now is contradicting what I've always thought in my mind. Mm-hmm. And that is playing havoc on a lot of people. And a lot of people are saying, man, this is kid stuff. This is video games. This stuff needs to be removed. Okay, all right, I'm listening. But it's really blowing me away because I felt like I had an explanation for the migration, the suspension of bass in water columns, why and when and what happens. Mm. And I'm learning now a lot of what I thought I can pretty much throw out the window.
Yep. Throw it out.
It's not like what I thought it was.
New knowledge. That's so interesting to me. I'm curious if it hasn't always been that way. If they did that for whatever reason, even if it is just purely temperature, what drives a fish to move around like that?
There's no doubt from what I'm seeing. And again, I could be wrong again because I've been proven wrong with this new technology. But I'm thinking that there's fish out there that's been doing this all this time, and we never have known it until we have got the technology to read the water like we have today.
I'd believe that. And you know, half the people that say forward-facing sonar isn't a challenge, I don't think half of them have ever even seen one in person or touched it. Because I saw it, I'm like, that's not easy. It is challenging, especially for some people that have no idea.
Extremely challenging. This old man, I mean, extremely challenging. So, but it's okay. I like change to some degree. And I don't want, and we're gonna circle the wagons in a little bit, and I'm gonna tell you exactly how I feel about forward-facing sonar and what I think it's doing to the sport and what needs to be done to try and get things regulated and things in a proper balance because things are changing, and I don't see them changing for the good. I see danger, and I want to be aware. Talk about that, but I'm not talking about your political position and how you stand. I'm talking about the information that the technology is offering us.
Okay.
So I'm not going into the political side of it and saying I'm against it, I'm for it, he's against it, therefore it's ruining everything. I'm not going there. We'll go there in a minute, but I'm not going to go there right now. I'm simply talking about the information that the technology is allowing.
You're talking just strictly the science behind it.
And it has made a monkey out of me because I thought I knew things that now I realize I was wrong for 30 years.
Wow.
So, you know, eating crow is a lot like eating turkey if you'll eat it when it's fresh.
Yeah.
So if you'll come on and say, hey, look, man, I was wrong. I really perceive things different than they really are.
Yeah.
And I speculated and was wrong. And so I want to be quick to admit that I'm learning stuff. And I think that's one reason I'm so fascinated with this new technology is, man, all this stuff that I thought was not right. And there's a lot of information being offered out there that, man, I had no idea.
And so now you're intrigued and you want to learn more. You want to see the fish yourself do these weird things that you've never known that they do.
Yeah, I've had a great time trying to learn, and I've told everybody I stink at it. But I am getting better. I'm getting a lot better, and I'm enjoying it. Personally, I got a business partner, a friend of mine, drives him crazy when I say that because he hates it. He thinks it needs to be banned from the face of the earth. And he makes valid points.
Right.
He makes some very, very valid points. So I don't argue. I just listen, and I listen to both sides. And I'll be completely honest. When I listen to one side that says, man, it's destroying the sport. Our high school fishermen are coming along and they don't understand the basic foundation of what fishing is all about. All they know is how to play video games. On and on and on. I listen, and very valid.
Yeah.
Then I go over here and I listen to a kid that say, hey, I grew up, my dad and I, we fished boat docks and we fished laydowns and we fished grass just like you did. But when the forward-facing sonar came out, I found my niche. I got excited, and I was able to do things that I was never able to do before. So I don't think it's fair that you're criticizing my method of fishing. I'm not criticizing yours. Okay. So I go back and forth.
Yeah. There's a lot, and you can take it two separate ways. There's tournament, and then there's fun fishing, or like leisurely fishing. And then there's the topic of, okay, well, now all these lakes are getting overfished. And people are assuming that it's because of scoping. Now, whether that's right, whether that's wrong, I'm not really sure. Some of the data has shown that since a lot of this live scoping has become big, there has been a depletion of fish. And so a lot of people were coming together and saying, okay, well, now we need to keep restocking these lakes quicker, rather than like the rates that the fish are going and that they're depleting is faster than in the past.
Well, the great Hall of Famer, John Powell, when Ray Scott and all the guys at Bass got their heads together and said, man, it's a shame that we're going to these lakes and we're killing all these fish.
Yeah.
We've got to develop live wells. Forestwood developed an aerated live well in a Ranger boat, and things changed. All of a sudden now we're releasing fish. Well, John Powell, the Hall of Famer, great shallow water bass fisherman, awesome guy, a retired Marine that came on and was very successful on the BASS circuit.
Yeah.
John Powell said, catch and release is going to preserve the fish themselves. Will have more fish to fish for, but we're going to educate them, and they're going to be far more difficult to catch. As we catch fish and take them out, and we catch new fish, we're not educating them because we're taking them home.
Yeah.
But as we catch them and put them back, catch them and put them back, catch them and put them back. After about the fifth time, they're getting pretty much aware of these artificial baits.
Wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I see that little black and blue little jig fall in that water. I'm like, you keep
if
that.
I picked up a cob of corn at dinner and I bit it and a hook jerked me off the table, I'm gonna be real leery the next time I
you
eat
see some corn
on the cob. I can tell you
man.
that. So and that's where we are. So we see that happening with forward-facing sonar. I fished with Humminbird, and Humminbird was very much inferior in the beginning days of forward-facing sonar. Extremely inferior. I didn't even know how inferior until I got Mega Live 2. And it's changed the whole world. It's right there with, I feel like, personally, I don't know everything, but I think it's as good as you can get. But now I say, golly, man. But when I first started, I could do fine catching fish 20 foot in front of my boat.
Yeah.
You can't do that now for the most part. You go to Lake Murray, where I fish a lot, and if you can't see your bait 40, 50 feet out, and you don't get that fish 40 or 50 feet out, you're not going to catch him. They've wised up, and they're going to continue to wise up, just like John Powell said about catch and release period. They're going to wise up to that little minnow. They're going to figure it out. They've already got more difficult to catch today than they were a year ago.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. It made me think of this this reel that I had seen. Somebody put a camera on the end of their hook, and he casts his bait out there, and all you see is this bass. He's just sitting there. He's just staring right at the bait. He's not moving. He's just staring at it, and then he swims off. He's like, It's like he knew. It's like he knew. It's like he clocked it for a second, and you could see the little gears turn, and then he's like, I don't think I'm going to go for that one, and went on.
Yeah.
So
and
who's to say?
People, forward-facing sonar, what it's done for me is it's shown me all the fish out there that I can't catch. I mean, they
I know
turn
that
around
kills
and
you.
swim away, you know. So I've learned a lot. But we're not talking about the philosophy of what it's doing to our sport. We're talking about the technology that it brings to the table to be able to evaluate what's happening on the water. You're looking live. You're seeing fish do things that you never anticipated them to do.
Yeah.
It's defying a lot of the articles that were written in Bassmaster magazine about the migration of fish, following the creek channels, following the shoreline, doing a lot of things that we assumed that they did. And that we're realizing that fish will just swim out in wide open water,
Right.
And end up someplace who knows where that is.
I'll tell you what, we've got to get a scientist on this podcast, and that would be a great topic. Like, y'all stay tuned, because I'm going to find somebody to come on here and let's talk about overfishing or some of the trends that they've actually seen with the data behind it, and go through like the different lakes, because I feel like that would be more of the turning point from any decision that's made about forward-facing sonar, especially for tournaments. If it's damaging the environment that much, then yeah, there needs to be some stuff going on to kind of put a little pause to that. Maybe some regulations.
I'm an archer, and I started out shooting a bow as a kid, just an old glass recurve bow. And then, of course, when technology came along, I started shooting compound bow. And compound bows have gone from 200 feet a second to 300 to 340 or 50 feet. It's just gotten more and more advanced, and the range of shooting a deer went from 15 or 20 yards out to 100 yards.
Yep.
Levi Morgan shoot one in the eye at 100 yards. He's that accurate, and so technology has advanced so much in that arena. From what Fred Bear and the old Ben Pearson and the old traditional archers did, where you really needed that deer inside of 20 yards, which changes everything versus now being able to shoot them at 70 and 80 yards. It's a different game. And then crossbows come along. They're shooting over 400 feet a second now, and it's a 100-yard game. Completely nothing like what archery was in the traditional archery days. So can you reel that back in and change that technology and start regulating people to conform to the 15, 20-yard shots? And the answer to that is you can't do that.
Yeah.
And so now we're looking at game-changing, absolutely game-changing technology in the sport of fishing. Can you reel all that back in? I don't know the answer to that. Should we reel it back in? I don't know the answer to that. I don't know what you're going to do with it, but I want to go back before we get too deep into weeds and talk about early spring fishing, what takes place, and what I still know to be true, and that's those fish, they get excited when that water warms up, and they suspend up, and they get higher in the water column, and you change a bait based on what the situation calls for. So I go back with Boone and I, circle way back.
Circle over the wagon.
Yep. And when he was not sure what I was talking about, and he was confused that I was continually changing lures. But the structure continually changed. The situation changed. Now, the only change that I did make to make the same application but with a different bait, and I explained it to him. The shaky head I was fishing was on the bottom, and I was swimming it through the brush, and I was catching fish. I changed to a Randy Tharp jig, which I love. I changed to that jig for one reason only. The jig is a bigger profile, and it catches bigger fish on average.
Okay.
So that was the only change that I made that was simply to try to catch a bigger fish.
Okay.
And I just wanted a bait that offered a bigger profile. And two, I put a little crawfish on the back of that jig. I could swim it a little more realistically through that brush.
Okay.
So that's what I did that for. The rest of the time, when I went from a jerk bait to a bladed jig, we had a little area there where the water was clear. And that jerk bait looked awesome in that clear water. And I caught one like on the third cast, and I had another one follow it up. But then we went on, and the wind had been blowing during the night really hard. So we got into an area of the lake where there was a lot of red mud banks where that wind had blown. So it had a big cloud in the water. And I felt like a bladed jig was more visible and a better choice for that watercolor. Okay. So I changed for that. So I explained that to him. Then when we got down there, I used a little arc lipless crankbait, and I caught one super shallow. I mean, I hit the water and turned the handle twice, and boom, caught a 3-pounder. Okay. So with that fish being that close to the surface, I thought, boy, that square bill. Yep. That square bill's going to work. And we were coming up on a real stumpy area that's very, very hanging. You throw your lipless, you get hung up. You throw that square bill, you can come right through it.
Yep.
So those are the changes I made based on the water column, the temperature, and the structure.
Yes.
And it confused him. As I explained it, he caught on. He caught on. He can see that. So the whole point of the conversation is to be optimistic. Think about your circumstance. A lot of guys, girls, fishermen will tie on a certain bait that they have confidence in, and they'll throw it in every set of circumstances. And at the end of the day, they may have a good string of fish, but I've always said my philosophy as a tournament fisherman was always 99 is not a good number if 100 is achievable. So you come in at the end of the day with a pretty good string of fish and you just threw that one bait. But how much better would your string have been? How many more fish would you have caught if you would have changed up and had the right tool for the structure?
Okay.
So I'm really big on that. And those are the things that make me continue as I'm older and older and older to enjoy the challenge of fishing.
Yeah.
You know, I don't like to fish one single point or one stump or one brush pile and be defeated.
Right.
I want to catch him.
Yeah.
I know he's there.
You want to figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the fun part
challenge.
of fishing. And that's what springtime fishing's all about. And a lot of guys will say, well, I went out and practiced and I thought I had it figured out, but today's a completely different day. Let me tell you what I learned as a tournament fishing. Every hour is a completely different hour. Fish don't just change overnight and the next day. Man, those fish are changing constantly. Temperature, wind, all sorts of things will spark a change. So you got to keep thinking. And this is the time of year you want to think. You want to say, okay, this is what's happening. Let me try this. Let me try. And figure out what works and then figure out why it works. And then that will help you select the next lure for a total different situation.
Yep.
This is why it works because the fish were this deep and this is what they were doing.
Right.
So I think that's so important. And now that we've opened up this can of worms on forward facing sonar, I saw you had a question that some viewer wrote. And let me tell you this. Here's a guy, I opened my mouth and the Garmin guru,
Yes, sir, you did.
he laid it on me, boy. He laid it on me. And I love his passion. And I stepped on his toes, not intentionally, but I did. And I'm at fault. He fired back a little bit aggressive, but he fired back because he loved what he was doing and he thought I was completely unfair.
Attacking it, yeah.
So I said then, I respect the fact that Randy, I respect the fact that he's so passionate about what he believes and he was so willing to stand firm on his position. And I'm a pretty hard-headed guy, but I stopped and I thought about, now wait a minute. Let me be smart enough to consider what he's saying. So I started listening. So I did a podcast with him and I stated my position. He stated his position.
Right.
And we were miles apart, but we agreed with each other on some points. So I left that saying that I don't know the right answer. Somebody smarter than me is going to have to figure out what is best for the sport. Now, I want to reiterate this. I don't know how you can find fault with this. I want what is best for the sport, period. And if it means I don't get to fish with forward facing sonar, so be it. If it means everybody gets to fish with it all the time, so be it.
Right.
Whatever the rules are, whatever anybody figures out, what is best for the sport, I'm all in because I want what is best for the sport. So with that being said, please don't throw rocks at me.
Right.
I have changed my position, and I will probably change my position again because, like I say, I can listen to one point, and it's very valid. I listen to another point on the other side, and it's valid. So I'm confused. I'm admitting that. So I have changed my position.
Yeah. Yeah, you have, especially from the beginning. But as more information comes out about this, I mean, forward-facing sonar isn't exactly new. I mean, there's been studies about it, even in the saltwater world. It was big before it ever hit freshwater. So it's been in the game for a while. But I feel like circling back to your position, you were very hard against it at first because you saw okay, this isn't going well. This is all that it is. But once you actually educated yourself and got one and started using it yourself, then you started noticing like, hey, there's so much more that we didn't actually know about these fish. You're learning from it. You're learning new things, new ways to catch fish, but there's still a way that you have to know your fundamentals before you go diving into the big toys. You can't build a house if all you know how to do is use a hammer and nails. That's how I like to say it.
I use the claw more than I use the hammer.
You do.
But let me just say, very well taken, Sarah Beth. Very good observation and absolutely true. We learn more and we become more educated, and our opinions tend to change. But I have not changed my opinion from the very onset of what I said. I want what is best for the sport. I am not sure how in the world you shop technology. I'm not sure how you regulate. I know the PGA is not allowing them to use this supersonic golf ball. Major League Baseball is not letting them use this supersonic baseball that goes 30 or 40% further. I get it. I'm all about let's figure this thing out. And it is a tough one, guys. It is the toughest. It's the most divided our sport has ever been. And I don't like that. Man, this is a fun sport. Fishing is something fun. And there's a lot of camaraderie. Man, I go to a sports show and I hang out with people and we tell fishing stories, and it's exciting and it's fun and it's wholesome. And that's what I want. I want to get back to where we were before the Civil War broke out.
Yeah, 100%. You're like, why is everybody yelling? Be nice to each
shooting
other.
Brother, cousin shooting cousin.
Yeah.
We don't want to shoot anybody. We want to be happy people.
Yeah.
So but I love to fish with it. I'm just going to be honest with you. I was jigging a minnow the other day over the top of a tree in 60 foot of water, and I watched a little light come up out of that tree and eat my minnow, and it thrilled me to the bottom of my soul, man. I thought, whoa, look at this. Oh, man, caught him a fish like
Got you
a
some
kid.
new stuff. Yeah, there you go. Well, I'm going to jump into some of these questions if you're ready for them.
Let's jump into them.
All right. Somebody asked, do you believe that today's pros are working as hard as the older pros within the tackle industry?
I've talked to a lot of guys, and that is a good question. I've talked to a lot of guys. They're busy. They're fishing. They're not willing to go and do in-store promotions. They're not willing to go and do things. We had a young classic winner one time, and Ray Scott said to win the Bassmaster Classic is worth $1 million through endorsement opportunities. Now, when I won the first classic, it only paid $25,000. To say it's worth $1 million when all Ray did was write you a check for $25, people found a lot of, but it did. It changed my life. I mean, it gave me opportunity, and I started doing in-store promotions, and I hooked up with Mustad hooks, with Uncle Josh pork rinds, with Plano tackle boxes, with Berkeley trilene, and I got a handful of sponsors that all paid me $100 for an in-store promotion.
Yeah.
Well, Kmart was a big deal then, and then in the South we had Roses. So that was another big deal. So I could do 3 in-store promotions in a single day.
Right.
So I could make $2,000 a day in 1980.
Yeah.
Well, $2,000 a day
In 1980.
In 1980 was a lot.
pretty good.
So I was willing to do whatever. I was blown away that I had the opportunity to make that kind of money.
Yeah. I think anybody would take that opportunity if they had the option to go and speak about the
you
things
say
that they love.
But there's some that wouldn't. They said, man, I ain't doing that. I hate those things.
Get over it.
Well, I understand it. I totally understand. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of travel. It's a lot of people. And you got to be a people person to meet and greet,
True.
I get it. And some people are not comfortable with that. But you're not going to make it. So we had a young classic kid. He came back to me and he said, that's a bunch of bunk about how much the classic's worth.
Yeah.
And I said to him, I said, man, you got to work for it. It's not just coming to you in the form of a contract. You got to, but it does give you the platform and the foundation to go out there and build on and make that kind of money. I mean, I made money that I never dreamt I'd be able to make, and it was because of promoting opportunities. Well, I'm not sure that there's a lot of the younger kids today looking at it in that same light.
Oh, no. I mean, just watching you, your work never stops. And I think it takes a specific type of person to make it big in the fishing world. I mean, you're 71 years old and you're gone. Like every other week you're flying out somewhere to have to go do something or, going all these places, but it's a nonstop thing if
And
you're going to
Jimmy
be
Houston
in this.
works me in the ground. Jimmy Houston's 80 years
so
old.
crazy.
And I don't know. I look at his calendar. I say, Jimmy,
Is he really?
he's 80 years
He's
old
80 years old?
and has bangs.
Oh, stop.
What can you say about that?
You leave that man alone. You leave Jimmy
He
alone.
is the hardest working guy I've ever seen. But Jimmy has made a heck of a living in this sport. He's blown
Yeah.
me away. I mean, he's done so well. But
Wow.
he works like a Trojan, man. He's gone and he's doing. I look at his calendar and I say, Jimmy, I thought I was busy. How in the world? But the guys today, they want to be on the water. I get it. I
Yeah.
get it. But I'm going to be totally honest, and I met with the CEO of Luz just a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about the difficulty of being able to support all the guys. And Luz has got a gigantic pro team, maybe the best assembly of pros in the history of the world. How do you keep growing on that? There's just not enough room. And here's what is happening. Some of these guys are being released. And some of them get kind of bitter about that.
Right.
But the one thing you got to realize, if you work for Luz, I don't care what you win, how much you win, if you don't help sell rods and reels, you're of no value. It doesn't matter what you accomplish. We're different than other sports. Tiger Woods, for example, when he started winning a golf tournament, Nike ran 10,000 ads on Tiger Woods. So Nike built that coalition. When Michael Jordan started wearing Nike, Nike promoted Michael Jordan,
Yeah.
and they brought that together. Our industry don't have that kind of money.
No.
So you got to promote yourself and the products along with it. A lot of people call me at times, they'll say, oh, you're just trying to sell a product. I am trying to sell a product, no doubt about it, because if I don't, I can't make a living. If I don't, I'm a liability to Luz. If Luz is paying me money and I don't sell enough rods and reels to justify what they're paying me, then I become a liability.
Right.
So I want to be an asset. I want to sell way more rods and reels than what they're expecting me to sell, because that's job security.
Yeah. Well, you have to have a business mindset. It's more than just, oh, I'm a fisherman and I'm this big name. You know who I am. If you're not selling a product for this company, they don't care. We've seen all these business people. They come into these companies, they take over, don't really know anything about the sport. All they're seeing is numbers and how am I going to run this business? How are we going to make money? And if you're not delivering anything, sorry, we don't care who you are. If you're costing us money, we're cutting you off.
Yeah,
and that's just how it
is. It's very
is.
difficult. It's tough on these guys. You know, I was talking with Ken Eubanks, CEO of Luz, and he said, I'm going to be honest with you. This guy's been loyal. He's been faithful. He's done a great job. But if I cut him loose tomorrow, it will not affect our bottom line.
Yeah.
So I've got responsibility to the
keep
owners.
that up. Right.
I've got responsibility to the stockholders.
Yeah.
But I also have responsibility, so it's a tight line you have to walk.
Yeah.
So these guys, me included, I can't rest because I've got a 50-year history, because what I did in 2024 doesn't have any value in 2025 if I don't use it to help sell product and help pay my own way.
Right. But reiterating that for you, you are the type of person, yes, you have a family to provide for, and yes, you still have to make an income, but you're not the type of person that would ever sell anything to your fans that you did not believe in, even if it was for a check. Like, you would not. And I mean, you had that with a brand that I'm not going to say a few years ago that cut you loose just because you didn't like the way that something fit on you. And, you did step on some toes, probably hurt some feelings, but you weren't going to do it.
It's hard to say that, and people don't respect that. And I'm not asking for it, but I will not. I always think about my dad and how little money he made and how much he loved to fish. And I think about when I sell you a rod and reel, I'm selling to my dad. So I'm not going to sell you something that is not going to perform to expectations. That's where I'm at. So I've always been
good
there, and it's kept me. I've still got 7 or 8 of the same sponsors that I started with 45 years ago. I've been through good times, bad times.
Loyalty.
Not been paid, but I've stuck with them, and they've stuck with me. I think it is like a marriage. It's for better or for worse, and you work together, and you call them out. If you got something, hey, I'm gonna tell you something. This line ain't worth a nickel. I don't like this. You know, I got in trouble with Berkeley over Vanish.
Yeah.
Vanish was a line I did not like it, and I called them out, and I said, guys, this doesn't meet your standard. You guys are better than this. And then they came out with Trilene 100% fluorocarbon, and I'm blown away. It exceeded my expectation. How in the world do you make a line this good?
Right.
So I promote one, and I don't promote the other because I don't think it's what you need.
Right. Well, I mean, as a company, you'd want somebody who's in the sport to truly review your product and give honest feedback of how can we do better. You know, it cracks me up that these brands get their feelings hurt. I'm like, I'm sorry you have a cruddy product, but it's do better. You said that your line is this tough or whatever their promises were to the people. And then when it's not that, that's false advertisement. You can't do that.
You say companies want you to evaluate and be honest. Some companies do.
Some
companies
all
are
should.
just marketing geniuses, and they get you to buy something, then they trash it, and they come out with
And
the
they
new
don't care.
improve,
Yep.
and they just want to sell you. Thank God I've been able to stay with companies that is not their philosophy. Their philosophy is let's make a great product.
Right.
And I love, I talk about Luz, I talk about Trilene, I talk about
Yep.
Ranger Boats, I talk about Mercury Outboard. All of these companies,
Yeah.
they want a better product. Mossy Oak, they want to make the finest absolute product they can make. I like that. I like that
Right.
attitude. And that's the companies that I'm comfortable working with because
That's awesome.
they police themselves on making a product that is a value to the consumer.
Yeah, but honestly, good for them. I think most companies should look at that as a role model because, I mean, that is the type of company their work and their product is going to show for itself. At the end of the day, it's going to pay off, But speaking of costs and companies and all this other stuff, there's another question. What is your take on the rising cost of boats and tackle nowadays?
I'm going to tell you, it's so frustrating to see people that can't afford to get engaged in the sport on the level that they want to. And it is, but it's always been that way. It's always the haves and the have-nots. And I hate all that. I wish everybody had everything, but it doesn't work that way. And inflation is for real. I go to McDonald's where I used to spend $3 and it's $12. It's not $4 or
Right.
$5. It is just
It's for like one
COVID
person.
drove this country prices through the absolute roof.
Oh, yeah. Look, we can get political all day long on that.
Well,
Our economy is crud. You cannot survive.
It's not only us, but it does. It
Yeah.
bothers me. I just sold my boat for the year, and I had a lot of calls. I had tremendous amount of calls. And
Yeah, you did.
a lot of people that called me had not been shopping and didn't realize the cost of boats today, and so they were totally in shock. And I get it, but golly, bomb man, we got more stuff. My boat had $45,000 worth of extras.
I think I just about threw up in my mouth a little bit. I'm thinking about that.
I mean,
Oh,
but
man.
that's where we all are. We got hydraulic jack plates. We've got we've got units on the front. We've got forward facing transducers. We got target lock. We got 360. We've got blowers in our rod lockers to keep our rods dry when it's raining outside where they don't mold. Oh, that's awesome. But it adds
Bougie.
cost,
It sure does.
And my boat today is twice the amount of fiberglass at my original boat, 3 times. The handwork and the
Yeah.
labor that goes into making that thing perfected, it's just so much more.
It
And
is.
it's driving up cost. And then rods and reels are more expensive. Line is more expensive. Lures are more expensive.
Yes.
It's, but if it were just our industry, I would be double concerned. But when we're talking
not.
about a $6 hamburger that used to
Yep.
be $2, we're talking about a 69-cent Coca-Cola that's now $2.50.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just crazy. So I'm hoping that our new administration is going to do something, and they're putting more effort forth than I've ever seen in America to try to cut this and trim it and get it back in line. And I'm hoping that'll work.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we live in an economy now where just a single income household isn't cutting it anymore. So typically husbands and wives, you typically both have to work if you're going to grow at any sort of point and get out of, even if you're going to stay middle class, it takes a 2-person household in this economy. Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, go tell your mama.
Good luck with that. Yeah, right. That's funny. Well, moving on to the next question. So one of the top pros, I'm not going to say names, who came in with great expectations, and he has announced that he's not going to compete in the Elite Series anymore, and he's disappointed in the way it turned out to be versus his expectations on the sport.
I listened to him, so I know who that is. I listened to his podcast, or I listened to him on a podcast. It wasn't his podcast, but he was talking about his disappointment. He called BS, which I didn't like that, on the sport itself. But his analysis was this. He said, hey, we're nothing but employees. You can say whatever you want to, and I'm not faulting this guy. It's just a different outlook.
Yeah.
We're not a sport. We are not a sport. We're employees. We work for Bass, or we work for Major League Fishing. We're not a sport. Well, we've never been a sport. And I don't know of anything, and you start comparing the NFL football, or you start comparing to NASCAR, and there was some of that done. Mm-hmm. NASCAR, you got to have $20, $25, $30 million to enter that arena. And that's not going to get you very far. I'm just going to tell you that. Earnhardt told me a long time ago, if you want to make a small fortune in racing, you start with a large one. Yeah. And it won't take you long.
It won't take you long. That's terrible.
And so you look at NFL football. I heard the other day that the Cowboys franchise was worth like $2 or $4 billion. So, no, we're not a sport like that. We're not generating revenue like the NFL or like NASCAR.
You can't even compare at that point. That's 2 separate ball fields. Like, all right, now settle down. Don't be dropping no names.
That's the outlook of this particular fisherman. This fisherman's a great fisherman, and he's very accomplished, and he's done a lot on social media. Right. But his take on it was, hey, we're not a sport. We never have been. We're not a franchise sport, nor do we reach people on the level of NASCAR or NFL.
Correct.
So we're not generating that kind of money.
Right.
And that's what these sports that pay salaries, he was insinuating, as if you accomplish a certain level,
you get paid.
Yeah, you
salary,
get paid.
Salary based.
You should get a salary. You shouldn't be an employee. So Bass or Major League Fishing is holding you down because they should be sharing revenue. I think that he would be appalled if he looked at their earnings.
Yeah, I feel like that would all be well and good, and I agree that a lot of some of these fishermen should be compensated, but if you can't do it because the funds aren't there, I mean, we're not generating all that.
I disagree with that, and that's fine. I understand you thinking that, but I don't. Yeah. I think it is a platform, just like Ray Scott announced early on. You win the Bassmaster Classic, it's worth $1 million. It is to those that are willing to work for it. That's all it's ever been. It's a platform. You can walk up. You can be a nobody like Hank Parker that borrowed $10,000 on a note from the Northwestern Bank and started fishing.
Yeah.
Take what you get, parlay that into something bigger because it gives you a platform. But Bass, Major League Fishing, none of the tournament organizations generate revenue like the NFL or NBA or Major League Fishing, Major League Baseball. It's not there. No. We don't generate that kind of revenue. So to have the expectations that this particular person had was unreal expectations to begin with, because he felt like the sport was at a different level. There was more money opportunity than there is. So he's greatly disappointed that the sport did not live up to his expectations. But truthfully, if you evaluate what Bass, Major League Fishing, all these tournament leagues are, they're an opportunity for us to come together to build a foundation, to build credentials that will allow us to go out to the world, the marketing world,
Right.
and be able to have influence on the consuming public to justify the revenue we're being paid. And you got to stay within your boundaries. You've got to understand. You've got to sell this much product to be able to be compensated on this level.
All right. Well, that circles back to what we were talking about before with the companies. You have to prove your worth to them, or it's sayonara, pack your bags.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the truth of it. Do you think that bass fishing as a sport will ever be big? And if mind you, we're not selling out stadiums like NASCAR is. I mean, that's a huge, probably growth of money for them. Is just from selling out stadiums from fans alone, and merchandise, all that other stuff. So
there are so many NASCAR fans that will never drive a race car. Never intend to drive a race car.
No.
There are so many football viewers, fans that will never play the game. I love Clemson football. I love to watch football. And I appreciate Alabama and Georgia and the SEC and all these great. I appreciate, and I watch all of them, and I'm entertained by them.
Yeah.
But I never play. I never would have been able to play. I never was fast. I never was quick.
Yeah.
I never had the instinct. I was not a football player, but I still love the game. That's not true with fishing.
Right.
People that fish, they engage in the sport itself.
Yeah.
No, there's very few fishing fans if they don't fish.
Mm-hmm.
So it's completely different. You've got all this fan base which encompasses millions of people to watch football. Mm-hmm. You got these guys that love the intensity of a NASCAR race that'll never drive a race car.
But no, it's entertainment.
It's entertainment. But fishing is an engagement sport. When you are a fishing fan, you are a fisherman.
Right.
So it's very unique.
I agree with that. Most people watch either to learn from it or they're watching because they enjoy fishing themselves. So I agree with that.
So people will identify. They'll say, I watch Hank Parker. The guy's been around a long time. He's fished with a lot of great people. I believe he's honest. And I believe if he tells me something about a lure, about a line, about a reel, about a rod, about this, I think he's being honest. Now, he may not always be right, but I believe that he believes what he's telling me is true.
Yeah.
So I think Hank Parker's got credibility. So when Hank Parker comes out with a lure or Hank Parker endorses a reel or a rod, I think people understand that I mean what I say. And I can explain. I don't just say, buy this rod because it does this. I talked about that Lew's skipping rod and reel that Andy Montgomery came up with. Mm-hmm. I demonstrated that. I learned that firsthand. So I don't ask you to buy that rod and reel based on just air.
Right.
Let me show you what I've learned. And I learned it from Andy Montgomery, and I was blown away, and I was excited about it. And I know we sold a lot of rods and reels, and I know everybody that bought one is going to be happy with it because you're going to be able to do what I wasn't able to do till I got mine. So I share that. People believe that. That's how you stay in this sport. Mm-hmm. And that's what you have to do. You are never going to be a franchise paid individual by the sanctioning organization, whether it's Bass, Major League Fishing, or whomever.
Right.
It's just not that kind of a sport. We don't have spectators that are not participants.
Right.
People that watch fishing watch it for a different reason. Mm-hmm. That's what we got to realize. So this particular pro, in my opinion, didn't evaluate what our sport is all about. And yes, it is a sport. It's the second largest participatory sport in the world is fishing. Yeah. So it is a participatory sport. People that watch, they participate. And people that watch want to learn. And people that watch want information. They could care less about what steering box you got in a NASCAR race car.
100%.
They could care less about what kind of shock spring and did you run a digressive shock or they don't care about that.
But in fishing,
they just want to watch. You know,
they want to be entertained.
Kyle
But now
Larson run it in the corner 200 miles an hour.
Golly. But yeah, I completely agree with you. When you're watching fishing, it's, ooh, what bait worked for them? Oh, what's that bait? That's cool. Oh, look at that rod. Hey, man, that's cool. I'm going to try that out. And I feel like that's a completely different market. It is a marketing
It's a
sport.
different market.
It's a market sport. And I agree with you. And if you're going to sell somebody something, put a why behind it. There is nothing I hate more than scrolling on social media and seeing some girl who don't, it could be like she's not even a workout page and she's promoting creatine. Hey, buy this powder. It's like, just because you got a pretty face doesn't mean that you know how to sell a product. And with that being said, not trying to be mean or anything or throw shade on people that do that, but to me, that's not a smart marketing strategy, and I feel like that's very displeasing to a lot of people, and I think that version of marketing is being thrown out the window nowadays, because I think people are getting tired of it.
I started this podcast, and I could have had a lot of co-hosts, and I could have had co-hosts that had tremendous fishing knowledge, and we could have gone back and forth, and we could have talked about controversial subjects, and they could have had a point that was valid, and I could have. But I chose you because I wanted somebody that was innocent. I wanted somebody that looked at it from the outside in a different viewpoint.
Right.
And your feedback. And it's amazing how more engaged you have become as time has come on. And you and I have spent time in the water.
Yeah.
And we go out and you're learning. And I wanted that fresh look on what we're talking about. And I wanted to be able to make points that, and hear your rebuttal, just like I disagree that we should ever be paid by bass or Major League Fishing. They've offered us a platform that will allow us, and here's a problem, and I don't know the answer to this problem. We're overloaded.
Right.
We got Jimmy Houston. We got Bill Dance. We got Hank Parker.
There's a lot of
people. We got
people.
Gerald Swindell. We got Kevin Van Dam. We've got all these different people. Now all these new guys coming in. There's not a lot of room there.
Yeah, there's no space for them. I mean, I feel like all that budget's kind of taken up. It's either I feel like that just creates a fiercer competition, honestly, in the fishing world. I believe I don't believe that there's room for everybody.
Yeah.
Especially not in the market. Like we were saying, the revenue of the sport, there's not room for everybody. And I mean, as sad as that is, I feel like that just should be an initiative to work harder, to prove yourself. And, don't be afraid to be aggressive in some of these sponsors. Like if you're looking to get sponsors, don't be afraid to reach out first. Tell them why you're worth X, Y, Z, Sometimes you just got to make that first step.
Well, and that first step is a critical part. Whether you work with an automobile company that you start out on a dealer level and you create sales and that dealer vouches for you and you're able to move into the Toyota series or the Chevrolet team or whatever it is, the Ford team, it's important to get started, and it's important to look outside the industry, automotive, food, drinks, other things. Under Armour is big.
Yeah.
Mossy Oak fishing. Mossy Oak is really gotten engaged in the sport of fishing. But let me tell you, that is not what Mossy Oak. A lot of people come back and say, Mossy Oak don't fit. Mossy Oak don't fit because Mossy Oak's a hunting company. And Mossy Oak has an awesome platform and a great pattern, and they look good and they conceal you.
But you can't tell me that wearing a Mossy Oak shirt is going to help me catch more bass. No, I'm not ever telling you that.
No.
Mossy Oak is a conservation company. And that has been their priority from the time I ever met them. Toxie Hayes is one of the most amazing guys you'll ever meet in your life. And Toxie Hayes is the most concerned about this environment of anybody I know. He worries about the turkeys. He worries about the deer. He worries about having everything left better than you found it. Be a conservation. He's called a gamekeeper.
Right.
And plant trees. Take care of your land. And there's controversial things that take place within the hunting world that we need to engage in. Right. That's coming one day in our fishing world. When the largemouth virus came along and a lot of things were happening, we needed a voice. So Mossy Oak is a fraternity that we can all join and be a part of to be a spokesperson for conservation. Let's fight the Corps of Engineers spraying aquatic vegetation everywhere, putting poison in our lakes. Let's fight that. Yeah. How can we fight that? We got to come together. How can we come together? We got to have a strong fraternity.
Right, absolutely. And I mean, I'll say too, circling back, I've learned so much by doing this podcast with you. I mean, when I first started, I'd hook a hot dog on the end of the hook and just hook for the bass. But, the more that I've gone on, I've actually curated an actual interest in fishing, and now it's a whole lot more intriguing to me the more that I figure out the science behind it. You know, talking about water columns, and to me that creates more of a challenge than just throw your bait out there, sit and wait and hope for the best. I hope something bites your hook. You know, it puts it into a new perspective for me.
Well, and the cool thing about fishing is you can make it as simple as you want to. You can put a hot dog on a hook and throw it out, or a piece of bread, or a cricket, and just watch you bobber. And if that makes you happy, that's wonderful. And then you may want to be in the blue water trolling for marlin or catching bluefin tuna. I watched the world's deadliest catch?
World's deadliest catch,
deadliest catch.
Yep.
Deadliest catch. They can have it. I hope I never catch a tuna. Them son of a guns are crazy, man, out there in the seas, bobbing of,
you'd be sick. You'd be sick. I get this.
Oh, man. I'd rather be putting an electric chair. It could flip a breaker or something. Come on. God.
That's terrible.
Well, hey, we're out of time,
we
Beth. We have talked and talked and talked, but it's been a good day, and I've enjoyed it.
I've enjoyed it, too. Well, with all that being said, all of our links are down below in the description. You got to hit the See More button. I'm going to get it real close. Hit See More, and there's little links in that description to the Huckleberry Apparel High School Fishing Forum. We've talked about that a million times. You can go sign up as an opportunity for any fishing team to create a really good fundraiser for their sport. So it's a good way to start generating funds.
I like that. And I want to give a shout out to Liqua Molly. Liqua Molly is a product out of California that has all kind of products for your outboard engine. And they're super, super great product. And they came on board. So it's the first non-adimnant product. And I told them I didn't want to talk about things that I wasn't qualified to talk about. I want to get some experts. I want to get some data that we can share with you. But I want to shout out to Liqua Molly, and we'll tell you more about them in the future. I want to shout out to Mossy Oak. They said, we love what you're doing. We like your podcast. We want to be a part of that. So this podcast is made possible by Mossy Oak and by Liqua Molly. And we appreciate them, and we certainly appreciate you tuning in or viewing, and we'll see you next week. God bless you. I'm Hank Park.
See you next week.